more open, reaching out to its members, engaging its members. And I called it the party without walls. And that means walls within the party, and silos we all used to also call it, meaning that the different parts of the party engage and interact with each other more. But it also means breaking down walls around the party so that the party, all of us, engage more with those outside the party, with those in the communities around us. Now, within the party, we all have different roles, different responsibilities. And if any one of us fail in those roles or fail to do what we're supposed to be doing, we all risk failing. So we all got to succeed. But that doesn't mean that we have to have silos. It means that we should be interacting with each other. In fact, by interacting with each other, talking to each other about what each of us is doing within the party to move it forward, I think we become a lot more effective. So for example, if the leader in caucus can hear more from all of us that are out on the ground, talking to those in our communities about the issues that are important to us, then they can be much more effective in the House. And for all of us volunteers out there who are going out recruiting people into the party, fundraising, reaching out to community groups, we'll be able to do a much better job if we better understand what's going on Parliament Hill, what the priorities of the party are, what the direction is that the leader and his caucus are taking the party in. So that's what this call is all about. We're going to do a lot more of this going forward. But I look forward to hearing your questions tonight. And again, I thank you for participating. And I got to do a quick shout out to, I think there's about a whole bunch of young Liberals at the Bedford Academy in downtown Toronto who are listening on the speakerphone. And for those who know the Bedford Academy, there's nothing academic going on there right now. But I welcome you guys. And I'd like to just turn the microphone over to the leader, Bob Ray, for a couple of words.
Thanks a lot. Mark, we're very excited, Mike, by what's going on. We really want to work hard to make sure we're listening. As you can tell, I've been speaking so much I'm losing my voice a little bit, but eager to listen to what people have to say tonight. It's going to be an exciting session. We've got some real challenges on our hands, not only dealing with this government, but dealing with competition from other parties and recognizing what we have to do. So I'm not going to give a long speech today, just going to listen to your questions and hope we can have a good
Mark, welcome to the virtual town hall. You are live on the line. Please go ahead with your question, Mark.
Yes, first of all, I got to say, Bob, wow, what a bounce. Thanks for putting the Liberal Party back on the Canadian political radar. You're now the official Speaker of the Opposition. Such a tremendous dynamic leader. I guess my question is, you know, when we get through this period and roll up to a Liberal election for the party leader, are we going to put some guidelines in place to keep a positive rapport between the various contenders for the leadership, so that we get a very civil debate and avoid providing the Tories with the basis for negative personal attack ads?
Well, I certainly hope so. Certainly, if you look at the last leadership race, I think when Mr. Dion was chosen, my own sense is that was a pretty positive experience for people. There wasn't a lot of negativity. There was a lot of good discussion on policy. Obviously, there will be people drawing a contrast between themselves and other candidates, but I don't think you're going to see this into some kind of Newt Gingrich, Mitt Romney, you know, escapade. I mean, we're going to be limiting the amount of money that people can spend. We're going to be encouraging people to be positive and constructive. and we're going to have the best interests of the party at heart. So I certainly hope that that's the spirit with which we enter into this next period. Good question.
Okay, great, and thank you, Mark, for that question. Thank you, as well as there is a lot of key piece of technology at work right now on tonight's call to make this event a success. And one of those pieces of technology is a live online chat that the party is hosting. And we want to know that in addition to being on the call right now, are you participating in the online live chat that's happening on the Liberal Party's website, liberal.ca? If you are participating right now on the online chat as well, please press 1 on your keypad. If you're not, and if you're just on the phone with us tonight, please press 2 on your keypad. Next up, we do want to take a question from Michael. Michael, welcome to the virtual town hall this evening. You are live on the line. Please go ahead with your question, Michael. Michael, are you there?
Yes.
On the line tonight with the leader. We're anxious to hear your question, so please go ahead.
Hello, Bob. I really enjoyed you at the convention. It was very, very uplifting. The one thing that I really, your French is really great, but the Quebec is a really important problem for our party.
Well, I think it's, I think it's one of our biggest challenges. I think we've lost, in the last election certainly was the low point in terms of our connecting with the Quebec majority, the Francophone majority in Quebec. And we simply have to regain our connection with that community. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about, working on how we can do that. And part of it is simply for the party to be more present. I've certainly tried to do that as leader. We're beginning to see a change in the polls in Quebec. We've now, I think most calculations allow, we've had a flurry of polls the last 2 weeks. And I think the message has been pretty consistent. The exact number in the poll might be a little different, but they all show us moving up. In fact, the latest Nanos poll had us at over 26% in Quebec. Other polls have been a little bit lower. But that shows that I think some of what we're doing is successful. One is it's engagement, it's paying attention, it's recognizing that the defense of bilingualism and the defense of the majority culture in Quebec, the French culture, is very, very important, not only in Quebec but outside Quebec, that we need to speak directly to the concerns of Quebecers about the economy, about the issues that matter to them. And I'm very concerned that Mr. Harper is, frankly, so unpopular in Quebec that, we're finding already now the separatist forces are lining up and saying the federal government doesn't represent us. So our job with Quebecers is to say that's not the only kind of federal government you can have. You can have a federal government that is much, much closer to how you think and how you feel about this country. And I think, frankly, a majority of Liberals across the country will be very comfortable with that message, because it's a message about a federal government that's present, not absent, a federal government that's not going to be abandoning people, but is actually going to be responding to their needs, and a federal government that cares about prosperity, but it also cares about making sure the prosperity is shared and making sure the prosperity is sustainable. And I think on those points, the federal government is, under the Harper government, is very weak. And finally, I think the Harper government itself, by its conduct, has thrown the whole question of democracy right into the mix. I think we're seeing that very clearly. And the fifth, for me, the fifth issue, there are these 5 issues that are on my mind. The fifth issue is very much Canada's place in the world. And there again, I think Quebecers have a sense of Canada as a place that, as a country that wants to make peace and create stronger security, that wants to work with other countries, that doesn't look, is not simply saying, let's find the military solution to this problem, but is trying to see what the other solutions might be. And again, I think that's very much in keeping with liberal values, going back to, all the work we've done since the Second World War on helping to rebuild the country. So I think when you look at those 5 big issues, I think we can claim to be very close to the people of Quebec. We just have to do a better job, frankly, of connecting with Quebecers and of really doing everything we can to establish that personal, warm, human link with them so they can see in us a party that is actually very close to how they're feeling about reality.
Great, and thank you very much for that question, Michael, and thank you, Mr. Ray. We're going to move right along now to Matt. Matt has a question. Please go ahead with your question, Matt. You are live on the line.
Good evening, Mr. Ray. Good evening, everybody. My feeling on this matter is that the middle class seems to be the one that does not seem to be represented. The average consumer doesn't seem to be represented anyway because there seems to be relief for everybody. You have low interest rates, but there is no relief for the average consumer in terms of interest rates or insurance for that matter. So the Occupy movement to me, even though they were not able to vocalize what their issues were, but these are some of the issues they feel nobody represents them. We may elect politicians, but nobody speaks for them. And perhaps that is something that the Liberal Party should adopt as one of its causes.
Well, if you leave your address with me, I'll send you a copy of the speech that I gave in November on exactly that issue, which is to say that it's when the middle class does well that the whole country does well. And one of the challenging things we've seen in the world economy, but also in the Canadian economy over the last 10, 15, 20 years is that there's been this assault on the middle class, that in fact the things that used to give people security, their work, their health care, their engagement in public prosperity has been diminished. We've seen the very well off doing very well, and this phenomenon of income polarization where a lot of middle class families are having to hold down 2 jobs, sometimes even 3 jobs in order to make ends meet. Housing costs remain very high for a lot of people. Yes, interest rates are low. There's no guarantee they'll stay low forever. And as they're staying low, people actually are borrowing more money. So we're seeing this problem of household debt, which has gone way up. And therefore, a lot of issues. Pensions, how we're being treated by our financial institutions, making sure we have real competition in terms of services for people. These are all big questions. So I can assure you that this issue of what's happening to the middle class is a #1 priority for the Liberal Party of Canada. And I think it's something, again, as a party, we have to remember that when we pay attention in terms of pensions, in terms of jobs, in terms of taxes, in terms of where the money is actually going, when we pay attention to those issues, people listen to us. And we've got to convince a majority of Canadians that we are in their corner and that we understand what they're going through and that we're going to do everything we can to make sure that the government is a force for them and not simply, people who are simply Harper talk a lot about prosperity, but they don't talk a lot about how to make sure that prosperity is widely shared. And that, I think, is a very important issue for us as a party.
Great, and thank you very much. Out to you.
That the XL pipeline is down until after the elections in the States. Now there's talk of exporting across Alberta to British Columbia through native land. What is the Liberal policy on tar sands? How does it view it exactly? I mean,
development. Of the GHG emissions, sustainable in terms of the communities that are being built around the oil sands. I mean, we have to recognize that there are a lot of workers who go in. They go in temporarily. There's directly involved with, but we certainly to have to deal with the fact that if we want to export these products either to the United States or elsewhere, or even use them within Canada, they have to meet a certain critical test with respect to environmental sustainability. Two parties. Want to, and the Conservatives say we want development, but we're not that interested in sustainability. And where the Liberals should stand out is saying we have to have sustainability. That means that every pipeline that's built, every new development aspect of the oil sands has to be strictest to work. Of issues around the proposed Enbridge pipeline. They will be dealt with by an environmental review. We should let that review work without being interfered with by the government. We want to let that process work. We're not opposed to that process. We want it to be made to work. We want to hear what about the sustainability of the plan to take the oil offshore in large tankers. We need to see how that's compatible with Canada's concern. 1970. It goes and gas to the United States. What we're talking about with Keystone is an even bigger project. But if we get into bigger pipelines with higher levels of production, that puts an increased burden on us to make sure that this development is sustainable. United States are out there. They're out there in the National Geographic magazine. They're out there in terms of what the EU itself, the European governments are saying. These are all things we're going to have to deal with. We can't just pretend they're not there.
Great. And throughout tonight, involved and participate those ways by visiting liberal.ca and joining into our online chat. Another way is by pressing *3 on your phone's keypad to get in the question queue to ask a question this evening. And another way is to actually answer our various polling questions throughout the evening, which brings us to this next question. Using your touch-tone keypad, you can vote on this question at any time. What issue should Liberals focus on in this session of Parliament? For the economy, please press 1 on your keypad. For fighting for your pensions and old age security, please press 2 on your keypad. For transformative change in our healthcare system, please press 3. Conservative attacks, please press 4 on your keypad. For protecting the environment, please press 5 on your keypad. And for affordable housing, especially for Aboriginal people, please press 6 on your keypad. And we appreciate everyone helpful to caucus. caucus. The next question. Live on the line, we're anxious to hear your question. Please go ahead, Andrew.
Good evening. I actually have seen that a few days ago Mr. Harper announced that Canadian pensions are not sustainable and he's moving his retirement age. Today, StatsCan chief economist Philip Gross resigned, and in part he cited effectively the lack of dissent alone, which in part stands for effectively just dictating down what people want to hear. So I just wanted to wonder how much, in your opinion, we can trust the Harper's assault on Canadian pensions, which is not something that he came into election with, and which is like a very big issue, not only for people retiring right now, but I think a lot of people my age, which is about 25 to 30.
Well, I mean, first of all, the pension issue is not only important to people who are already retired, working in a Southern European, in the worst sense of that word. That's exactly the quote is direct from what he said in a speech that he gave to a group of American conservatives. He doesn't like the government providing support to people. I mean, it's very clear. They're attacking every single program because he believes that people should basically do it on their own. When you're a neoconservative, that's your position. So Mr. Harper is frankly inventing a crisis. There is no crisis with respect to old age security. There's none at all. He's saying the system is not that theory. Public support, and that have no particular basis other than his desire to continue to cut back. And we're going to continue to attack Mr. Harper very strongly on this front. We've encouraged people to sign a petition. You go to liberal.ca, you can put your name on the petition. We've now got over 12,000. He has nowhere. Programs, they give more money to people who are less well off. They are a very important pillar for us in the fight against poverty. One of the reasons we've been able to reduce poverty for seniors, there are three big reasons. One is the old age pension. The second is the income supplement. Now under doubt.
Great, thank you for that. And I'm also happy to announce that we have almost 6,000 Liberals from across Canada joining us right now. So that's quite, and we're really evening. And I'd like to take is from May. May, please go ahead. You're live on the line. Welcome to the Town Hall.
Good evening, Mr. Ray. This is May. My name is May, and I'm a senior citizen. And what my word is, cannot that are here now. People they're full. Where do you go from there?
Well, I mean, we need to work with the provinces on two things. One is is a home care program across the country. Second in the future are going to be living and want to live in the same circumstances that people might have chosen in past years. But we do need to have a real mix of assisted housing, of housing where you and yet some have to be working very, very closely together to make sure these programs are properly financed. They're quite affordable to do if you have a body like the Central Mortgage and Housing, which has got a substantial surplus, to allow them to make the investments which will allow these and then allow people unaffordable. It's quite doable, but it requires imagination, and it requires a long-term commitment from the federal government. And I hope that we will see it, but I regret to say that I don't expect to see it from Mr. Harper. It is a very critical issue for us. We look at all these questions of what is sustainable. You know, the fact is that the aging of the population is something we have to prepare for. We're not that well prepared. Mr. Harper's method of preparing for it is to cut. It's to cut people's access. It's to cut people's situation. If he cuts old age security and the guaranteed income supplement, all that's going to mean is that more seniors will be spending longer on social assistance. They'll be spending longer on welfare programs because the most, as I said, among seniors, now we have to deal with the health care issues and with the housing issues when it comes to affordability. That's critical.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Ray. And just to the audience, to help us get a better sense of our audience of almost 6,000 Liberals that's participated throughout the evening tonight, we're wondering which age bracket are you in? You can use your touch-tone keypad to help us with this. So for under the age of 14 years old, please press 1 on your keypad. For 14 to 24, please press 2. For 25 to 34, please press 3. For 30 4. 5. For 55 to 64, please press 6. And for over 65, please press 7. Next up, we would like to take a question from Dora. Dora, welcome to the virtual town hall this evening. Thank you very much for your patience. You're live on the line. Please go ahead with your question.
Well, actually, I did ask the one thing that I wanted to ask, but I guess I could ask something else at the same time. When we're talking about seniors housing, I heard Bob Ray talking about it. Is right. Care once, home care was just starting, and I did, all the free home care, but I allowed people to contribute if they wanted to, and we did get some funds back from that, and I think they liked doing it because it's prepared to go into this, but when you're talking about seniors and home care help and all the rest of it, I think it is important to have that avenue open to them, that they can contribute something, maybe not all. Want a channel where they could contribute something?
I think you're right. I mean, I think, Dora, I think I know that you're very, very concerned about job creation, but actually when you look at sort of thing we're talking about in terms of seniors housing and the options that are available for people, that's actually a way of sustaining jobs in the economy. I mean, we look at the long-term interest that we have in housing, and to me it's a real necessity as we go forward. You're absolutely right about move forward on home care across the country. Obviously the provinces are directly involved and engaged in this. Most of them now have a co-pay program for some of the elements of home care that don't involve direct health care but involve other kinds of housekeeping. And I think people are quite prepared to. I think they understand. Doesn't to the care that they.
Okay, great. And we would like to go to our next question. Our next question is coming up from Tom. Tom, welcome to tonight's virtual town hall. You're live on the line with the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, Bob Rae, also the Liberal Caucus Chief Whip, Judy Foote, and of course Mike Crawley, the leader of, or the president of the Liberal Party. Please go ahead with your question, Tom. Looking forward to it.
Bill for mandatory prison sentences. Could you tell me what stage of it is it at in Parliament?
Yeah, it's out of the House of Commons and it's gone to the Senate. Maybe I can ask Judy Foote to comment on that because she's our expert. But my memory tells me that right now we had a meeting today of our caucus and. Long and hard, and Irwin Cotler, our justice critic, the effect of the minimum, the mandatory minimum sentences will be to dramatically increase the prison population at the same time as we know the crime rate is actually going down. Judy?
And that's the issue we're dealing with. When we talk about you know, the Conservative government, and they're talking about building mega prisons and talking about the fact that we need to put more people in prison when stats are showing, in fact, that our crime rate is going down in the country. And we've said repeatedly that instead of learning from the U.S., where in fact they went down that path, built mega prisons, only to find out in Texas in particular that it was the wrong thing to do, and instead of learning from the experiences in the U.S., the Harper government is considering going down the same path. And we've said time and time again, we don't need to be building mega prisons. So the Senate is dealing with it right now, but as our leader said, Irwin Cotler has been done yeoman service on dealing with in fact, the crime omnibus bill that had so many, I think 9 different bills in it, justice bills in it. And, but Irwin is
Okay, great. And our next question is coming up from Calgary. Reg. Reg from Calgary. Please go ahead with your question, Reg. You're live on the line.
Yes, Bob. I see the major issue in Canada right now in that small and medium businesses and entrepreneurial businesses do not set up because Canadians are very wary about providing capital. And what are we doing to reform our securities and exchange networks so that there's going to be a restoration of confidence in capital? Right now I feel too much gets skewed into overseas investments, into property, and we don't move forward as a nation because frankly we're stalled for entrepreneurial development.
This is a great question. I've asked Scott Bryson to look at it. I'm convinced you're right. We're finding a couple of things about the economy today that not many people are talking about. The first one is that there's an awful lot of money parked in some of the major corporations that simply isn't getting reinvested in the country right now because they're not sure about growth, and frankly because I don't think the government is being creative enough about encouraging those companies to invest. And this isn't just, you know, Bob Rae saying this. The Governor of the Bank of Canada, Mark Carney, has said exactly the same thing in his last annual report, where he said, look, you know, this is a real challenge for Canada. We're going into this period of slowdown with the corporate balance sheets in much better shape than they've ever been, and they're still not investing the way they need to invest, so that's a problem. The second one you've identified, and that is that there isn't enough what we call venture capital, or capital for ordinary business people or people who have a creative idea. And here I think we're going to have to be much more creative on the tax side in terms of how we encourage those who have money, particularly the financial institutions, the banks, to come forward. Some of them are doing a little bit, but not enough. The criticism I hear from business people about the banks is to say they'll only lend me money when I don't really need it, and if I really need it, they won't lend it to me. So this is a challenge. But I think we have to really deepen the capacity on the venture capital side, because when you compare us, one of the things that happens is small companies come forward, good idea, great innovation, they then start to do well, and bingo, it's the company's bought by an American company, and they're gone. And so we have to see what more we can do to encourage venture capital, to encourage companies to go public in Canada, and where we can try to get them a source of investment as they go forward. It's a, if I may say so, it's a big question, and I think it's one of the questions that we have to continue to really work on as a country.
Great, and we just heard from Reg in Calgary, and now we're going to go over and hear from Mark in Newfoundland and Labrador. Mark, welcome to the virtual town hall. You're live. Please go ahead with your question, Mark.
Hi, Bob and Judy. As you said, I'm from Newfoundland and Labrador, and I'm the president of a students' union at a campus at a college of about 10,000 trade and technology students provincially. And today we, as members of the Canadian Federation of Students, held a national day of action with students from coast to coast to coast. And our line is that education is not a privilege, it's a right. So coming up in this session, I think your caucus should really be calling on the federal government to get more involved in helping students reduce the net $15 billion of debt that we have and make the system accessible to anyone who desires to pursue a post-secondary education.
Well, I can give you a very short answer and say I agree with both your points, and it's great to hear from you. I actually did a tour in Quebec and northern New Brunswick and in Ontario so far. I'm going out to Alberta on Friday to talk to some people there too, as well as in BC over the weekend. I hope to get to Newfoundland shortly. But I couldn't agree more. We do have a real challenge of access. We have a challenge of affordability. In Ontario, we have demand far exceeding the supply. We have a lot of students lined up to do courses that they can't get into, particularly with respect on the trade side. And I don't think we're doing a good enough job as a federal government to try to really coordinate better and to understand better what's going on at the provincial level in terms of the labor market, in terms of job creation. And I don't think we're doing enough to support the people who need access, whether it's apprentices, whether it's full-time students in college, whether it's full-time students in university. And yeah, there is a big debt issue. The debt issue has gotten more severe over the last few years, and it's something we're going to have to deal with as a country, because it really doesn't make much sense if the federal government says, well, look, our deficit's coming down, and the students say, yeah, but my debt's going up. So who's gained here? Somebody's borrowing. And it costs the government a whole lot less to borrow than it costs your average student. So we've got some issues here we're going to have to deal with very directly. I've asked Mr. Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, to start working on this question in cooperation with you and all the other student groups across the country so we can develop the best possible program. He's agreed to do that. So we'll be in touch with you very shortly, brother. I can tell you we'll be there soon to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks. And moving right along, we are hearing from Liberals right across Canada tonight, and now we'd like to go over to Brian in Winnipeg. Brian, please go ahead. You're live on the line. Go ahead with your question, Brian.
Yes. Hi, Mr. Ray. My question's about supply management and why, if we want to be the party of evidence-based policy, are we supporting supply management? It seems to me that this is a policy that we could use to differentiate ourselves from the Conservatives and the NDP.
Well, that's a good question. I think it's fair to say that, well, first of all, the Liberals created supply management as a way of protecting or ensuring, it's really a way of ensuring a reason, and turkeys and a few other things, but those are the main ones, dairy and chicken and eggs being the most important. There are 5 major groups that are covered. It's funny you should call in, because I just was meeting with some folks yesterday. We had a gathering to talk about it. I think we have to continue to look at the facts and the evidence. I think it's a fair view to say that there are arguments about supply management, but of the view that when we look at those sectors of the farm economy that have been the most devastated or affected by dramatic change over the last 20 years, the one sector where we've seen some real stability is in the supply managed sector. Now, is there room for discussion? Is there room for improvement? Is there going to be more of a debate now that we're entering into these trade discussions with the Europeans and the Asian countries, both of which are big groups that we've started? Yes, there will be more discussions, but I'm not ready to close the door on supply management. I think when you say with such direction, producers across the country, I think they're very, very willing to engage in a real discussion, to explain what they do, and to show, what the impacts are when you get rid of it. In Australia, New Zealand, there have been very mixed reviews in terms of what's happened. The other point I would make is this. We're a tiny country when it comes to trade negotiations, and we have two large groups that we're trading with. One is the Europeans, the other is the Americans. Both the Europeans and the Americans, they don't. Going. And when I look at this question, I say to myself, I'm not sure that having the government shell out billions of dollars to deal with the real challenge we face in agriculture, which is a much longer discussion, is frankly better than the supply management systems that we have. They have some clear benefits, and I think it's important for us to understand what they are, and I think it's important for us to listen to people who say, here are the problems. So I say let's have the debate, but let's not immediately jump to conclusions about the importance of supply management, because I think it has some real benefits to it. But thank you for the question. Believe me, sir, there are lots of ways we can differentiate ourselves from the Liberals, from the Conservatives, and from the New Democrats. There are lots of ways in which Liberals, I think, can clearly show ourselves to be quite distinctive in what we're doing and how we're presenting the issues. But I appreciate the point.
Great, and now we would like to ask the members of an audience another question. In which area do you see yourself contributing the most to the Liberal Party of Canada this year? For volunteering in your riding, please press 1 on your keypad. For spreading the word amongst family and friends, including online through social media, please press 2. For through donations to the Liberal Party, please press 3. Or for helping develop policies and ideas to be shared with the party, please press 4. Next up, we would like to go over to North Bay, Ontario, and speak with Garth. Garth, welcome to the virtual town hall. Please go ahead with your question.
Thank you very much. Actually, the question I was going to ask has already been covered, but I'd just like to make a couple of comments, and then one of my big concerns is how the Harper government is changing the nature of Canada bit by bit, and one of the latest is their approach towards health care. Number 2, the determination to buy fighter jets, where other countries are bailing out on that. But another area of concern is the whole area of foreign policy, and I'd just like to ask Mr. Ray how he would see a liberal foreign policy as being different from the current approaches being taken by the Tories.
Well, first of all, on the foreign policy, I think we're going to see in the budget a very, very substantial cut in the budget of the Department of Foreign Affairs, and a diminution of our efforts on the civilian side of things in terms of presenting ourselves to the world. We've already seen huge cuts in our cultural programs internationally. We've basically frozen CETA. CETA's budget is moving away from providing aid to people living in poorest circumstances to CETA providing assistance to Canadian companies in their training programs who want to invest in foreign countries. This is a completely different direction for our development agency. around the world. We obviously want to maintain international. We want to make sure that the prosperity is widely shared among the poorest of countries and the poorest of people, and we want to continue to make sure that the world development is sustainable. So on each of these fronts, frankly, there's a different approach that we have to the Conservatives. The basic thrust of it is we need to see a steady cooperation with a number of other like-minded countries, all of whom, from my experience, now look at us with a state of complete bafflement as we stumble around the world. The people can't understand our policies in a number of areas. They have difficulty figuring out why it's taken the Prime Minister so long to get to China, why we've been so slow to develop those relationships, why we've been so determined to leave Africa just at a time when you know, that continent is showing signs of real potential in terms of development and also continuing social challenges, why we've been so slow to urge a development of stronger policies for peace in the Middle East and for a real understanding of what it's going to take us to get to greater international security. And those issues haven't been dealt with by the Conservative government, and we need to deal with them. But we do have some profound differences with Mr. Harper and his friends on this issue. And I must confess, watching the Republican debate in the United States, I realize with some horror as to where he's getting his ideas from, and also what the impact of those ideas is going to be on our own country. And it's something we're going to have to contend with as Liberals. I can tell you, when the election comes in 2015, if and when we're lucky enough to win the election, I hope we are, if we work hard enough, we will get there. It is going to be a big, big job to regain and recapture the heart and soul of this country and to reorganize our priorities so we get this country back on a track that I think most Canadians will recognize as the country they love and the country they want to see in the future.
And you know that Mr. Harper has said that once he's finished with Canada, you won't recognize it.
Well, we want to recognize it, and I think that's the challenge.
Exactly.
Great. Thank you very much. And having discussions like this with Liberals right across the country is very important for us Liberals and for the Liberal Party of Canada. And we want to continue having these discussions, and we want to continue hearing your ideas and your input and your outlook. And we want to know, what is your preferred channel for receiving communications from the Liberal Party of Canada? If it's on the telephone with meetings such as this, please press 1 on your phone's keypad. If it is through email, please press 2 on your phone's keypad. If it's over Facebook and social networking engines, please press 3 on your keypad. And if it's for Twitter, please press 4 on your keypad. Next, we would like to take a question from Dawn. Dawn, please go ahead with your question. You're live on the line.
Good evening, Mr. Ray and Judy. This is Don Holloway calling from Marystown. I've been a Liberal for many years. I've worked for the party for over 60 years. And one thing I found is membership. I know we're down in our membership, but we're nothing like Mr. Mulroney was when he only ended up with 2 members. So we're a lot better off than that, and we will certainly bounce back. But one thing I have in my mind is that before we charged for memberships, I signed up to over 1,000 members, Liberal members here. When we went to $5, I signed up at 11. Big discrepancy there. So I think we have to go back to a free membership if we want to get people really on our side and staying on our side over the years. By the way, I have something else about the education. A well-educated country is a wealthy country, and charging too much for education is a stumbling block. So education has to be financially accessible to everyone. The second thing I have in mind is that a cow eats grass, and the same cow in Canada eats the same grass as a cow in the United States, but in the United States, due to supply management, a Canadian mother will have to pay $7 for a gallon of milk, while a rich American mother might only pay $2 for a gallon of milk.
We,
I'd appreciate it.
if I could just interject, yeah, we haven't eaten yet, so I think we're having trouble keeping track of one question at a time. So maybe I'll throw it over to Mr. Ray to kind of take a first run at it.
I think, Don, I think your issue on the membership, one of the things we've done is created this new group called supporters. You don't have to pay to become a supporter of the party. You just indicate your support for the directions of the party and participate, and you'll be able to participate in choosing the next leader of the party. So you'll have no difficulty going out and signing up supporters. If people don't want to become members because it's $10, then that's fine. We understand that. The memberships is a way of sustaining the party financially and sustaining the riding associations financially. That's something we also have to do. But broadening the base of the membership is very, very critical. Couldn't agree with you more about the financial accessibility to education. As I said before, that's exactly what I've asked Mr. Trudeau to look at. I want Justin to lead the way in terms of getting our relations, going out to students and talking directly about why this is such an important issue and why we need to develop an even better program to ensure that people have financial accessibility and that they're not too heavily indebted as a result. My understanding is that this is our last call. So I want to say that for me this has been quite extraordinary. We've had several thousand people on the call. I know that there's a lot of people who still want to talk and want to ask questions. I would ask you, please leave your questions with us. We will get back to you with answers. Also say that our sense is from the discussions we've had tonight, this is a good process and a good way of communicating, and we're going to keep on doing this. So, you know, we're going to keep on doing it. We're going to have to figure out how we finance it, but we're going to keep on doing it. And I just want to say thanks. Good night to Mike and to Judy and to all of you, and all my thanks for participating in the call. Mike?
Yeah, I just obviously want to thank you for calling in, taking time out of your evenings. I know you all got busy lives. And just to add to what the leader said, is that we're going to do a lot more of this where we talk to each other, where we exchange ideas, and then I think that makes all of us a lot more effective in doing our roles, performing our roles within the party. But we're going to be pushing on a string if we don't also talk to Canadians outside of the party and engage them. I thought that last question on membership was a great one. How do we get more members into the party? And there's a lot of talk tonight about the Conservative Party. I think you're really seeing the Conservative Party bare its soul. Mm-hmm. And you got to remember where this party, and it is a movement, the Conservative Party. It started as a reform party, right? And that's really what it still is. It got its fuel, it got its momentum by people on the ground out recruiting new members, out talking about ideas, promoting ideas, and donating to that party. And that's what gave it its momentum. And the only way that we're going to surpass them, I mean, we can, the leader and Judy can knock them out of the park in the House of Commons. But if we don't have feet on the ground, people getting active in riding associations and recruiting new donors, recruiting new members, donating themselves, we will not be able to surpass the Reform Conservative movement with our own movement. And I can tell from the calls tonight and the questions tonight, there's a lot of passion. People clearly know that we've got a fight on our hands and are passionate about that. But we got to get active in the ridings. We've got to get active recruiting donors and recruiting members. So that's those are my closing thoughts. And once again, thank you. Judy, do you have any words?
Well, other than to say that, you know, in the House of Commons there are 35 MPs, and as the whip, of course, we make sure that we've got a good team working for Canadians, trying to again show Canadians what we have to offer. And, you know, in dealing with legislation and making sure that we're seen as a government in waiting, not an official opposition in waiting. But what's really important about this, and that is that while we have a team of 35 in the House, and of course we have our senators, we have a much larger team across the country. And that's who we're reaching out to, and that's who we have to engage. And that's what this process is all about. It's the importance of listening so that we know as a party exactly what we should be doing. Because we don't have the answers. And unlike Mr. Harper, we recognize that the 35 of us don't have all the answers. We need our team, our larger team throughout the country to make sure that 4 years from now, we will form the government.
Well, excellent. We'll do a big wave to the webcam to say goodnight.
Good night, good night.
Thanks, everybody, for joining in.
Okay. Well done.
The teleforum has ended.